I've been joined by the camera crew here on Linear. I've been here since yesterday and it's been a good morning. The fish have been feeding. I've had about 8 now. Got a couple in the sack to have a look at later on. I've fished this swim a few times before and usually done quite well. There's a bar at about 30 yards out that runs along the road bank here, and any of these road bank swims are quite productive at this time of year. They seem to quite like the deeper water. The far side, the riverside, is good later on when there's a bit more weed and it warms up. I think they move over there to spawn, but there's usually a few tench. Even if there's catching tench elsewhere on the lake, there's usually a few tench all the way along this side of the road bank on Manor. Yeah, it's been a good morning. The fish have been feeding. I've been catching on 2 spots. I've got one spot straight out about 30 yards with 2 rods on it. I've been spumming bait on that, a mixture of hemp pellet and maggots and chopped worm, and then I've got another one that I just use the feeder for, and that's been producing just 1 or 2 fish, but that's produced the bigger fish. Simple tactics on Linear are great. You don't need to try anything too complex, no great rig complications. If you're using maggots, just maggots with a simple helicopter rig with maggots on the hook. No need for hair rigs, I've found. Plastic baits work quite well, but it's quite easy with just maggots straight on the hook, or worm with a rig that I'll show you later, that what I call the sort of quick stop kebab rig, where you chop worms into little bits and thread them on the hair rig, and the tench certainly home in on those with a feeder full of chopped maggot and worm in the feeder. They're onto it very, very quickly, and I've had a lot of tench out of here in the last couple of years using both those techniques. It's gone a bit quieter now, so we can perhaps have a bit of a chance to go through and have a look at some rigs. Well, it's quietened down a bit now, which is often the case when you've caught a few fish. So I've got a chance now to go through what I use as bait to prime the swim. I've got a mixture of equal parts 2mm pellets. I use a mixture of krill, the red ones, and 2mm halibut pellets, the S pellets. And then equal parts with hemp seed. I just use a tin of those, and then you can just, if you want to be exactly, you can just measure your pellets out and then add in some maggots. But don't put the maggots in too soon, because if you've got a bit of water from the hemp, which is quite nice, it softens the pellets. You don't want your maggots to get too wet and start floating off. The reason for the different components, the hemp, I think everybody knows, all fish, all cyprinids seem to like hemp. There's not a lot of feed value, there's a lot of husk there, so that you won't fill them up too quickly with that. And the pellets, I like the micro pellets because that keeps them in the swim. They will fall in between the gravel and keep them grubbing. So even if they come in and have a good feed, there'll still be quite a lot of those pellets left, acting as an attractor to bring them back to the swim later on. And the maggots, obviously, again, they've got a visual attraction. We know they love eating maggots, and they'll also crawl into the gravel and be a food source for them to keep coming back to, rooting for. So if you've got a couple of pints of maggots out there over the course of a day through your spod mix and your feeders, you're going to have tench coming back looking for those. They can't resist them. Very green, that one, compared to some. Some of them are a lovely golden colour, but look at that dorsal fin sticking up beautifully, just on £8. That came on a worm, chopped worm rig, which I'll show you later. Just 3 pieces of worm chopped and put on a hair rig. We're using a Coram quick stop. So we'll get her back and see if we can catch another one. I'm now going to go on and show you what I put in the feeder. I use 2 basic things in feeders. If I'm using a maggot hook bait, I'll just use plain maggots in the feeder, and I like to use a combi feeder, 2 ounce, for nearly all of my tench fishing. And if you're using maggots, squeeze them in nice and tight, and then they're less likely to come out on the way down, and they'll be in the feeder when you get to the bottom. What I like about the combi feeder is they're a lot bigger than most of the common feeders on the market. And it's perfect. You've got the combi, so you can use it as an open-ended feeder with maggots trapped, or casters trapped with ground bait, but more importantly it's the size, and you can see there's a good amount of maggots going in there. If you're casting that 3 or 4 times in the first half hour of a session, even just a feeder is getting you plenty of bait down on the deck ready to bring the tench in. The other thing I use in the feeder is chopped worm, and I'll just show you a little easy way of using the chopped worm. So I use a little old pole cup, which put the worms in and you just chop them up nice and fine, and I always use them freshly cut each time I'm about to load the feeder, but I use them with a product called Natural Worm Attract from my local tackle dealer in Penkridge, Ian's Tackle of Penkridge. He grows worms, and this is what he grows worms on in. It's basically peat, but it's had worms living in it for about up to 3 weeks. So it's going to have worms, it's going to be passed through the inside of worms, it's had the worms crawling around in it, and it really acts as a good attractant, and it really complements the chopped worm. So I put a bit of that in, and then by chopping them in the cup I can then tip those in without having to get too messy, because chopped worm isn't the most pleasant of things to get on your hands all the time. And then I'll just top that off like that with a bit more of the worm cast, and there you have it, a little package full of flavour, and works really well with with a worm on the hook or on the hair rig. If I'm using maggots on the hook, it couldn't be simpler. Straight on the hook, no messing about with hair rigs. I haven't found that necessary on here. 3 on a 14, 4 on a size 12, maybe even a bigger bunch of 5 on a 10 if they're really having it. So just 4 maggots just nicked on, nice and simple. I use 2 types of hook in weed-free conditions. It's the PR39, which is a match hook, very sharp, strong by match hook standards, but not really designed for very weedy conditions. In those sort of conditions, the Expert Specimen is a really good strong hook and isn't going to let you down. I'm just going to show you how I bait up with the Coram Quick Stop worm kebab type rig. You just put the baiting needle into the back of the Quick Stop, and then just 3 small short sections of worm. 1, 2, 3. Just pull the Quick Stop off, slide the needle out, and there you've got a bait that will cast as long as you want to within reason for tench fishing. I started using this really because I was getting problems with worms falling off, and you can actually adapt it. You can put a bit of foam in as well just to pop them up, but I've generally found that's not required. So a nice really smelly mouthful for the tench, and on certain days that is an absolute killer rig. That's the kebab rig. It's been a really successful rig for me on Linear. One day I had 39 tench by about midday on that rig. Other days it will be very slow on this and you'll catch on the maggot, but generally speaking I've found this rig very successful. I've had fish over 10 pounds on it out of Hardwick, and it just seems to attract the fish. Right, now we've caught a few fish, I thought I'd show you just a little bit more of the detail of the rig that I've been using for the worms. What it is a simple Coram Quick Stop tied on with just an overhand loop to give it so it can move, and when you push it through the bait it doesn't actually have a knot against it, so it doesn't cut through the bait, but you get because you've got a loop, you then got a double piece of line through the worm, which makes it less likely to come off. And then I'm using 8 pound Expert mono, and then that's just a simple knotless knot to a 10 or a 12, depending how big a bait you're using, a 10 or 12 specimen. And then at the other end, so that I can use a quick change swivel on the heli rig, I just tie a loop using a loop tyre, the Preston loop tyre. And the aim of these is to actually tie them to the same length. So you attach your hook to there and then get your loop that you want over the peg at the length you want. So you can have 10, 15 or 10, 125, 150. So up to about, I tend to use all the 6-inch hook lengths. Take it off and put a loop over the top, and then you put your loop tyre through, turn it 3 times, and then the loop goes over the point of the top bit. You slide that on and just dampen it so it doesn't get any friction, and then you tighten it down. As it tightens, you then pull it off the back piece, which then gives a loop. Just tighten the loop from the tag end, and then you've got a perfectly formed loop, nice and strong. It's the same as a figure of 8 knot with 3 twists in, and if you then tie them to the right length, you can then store lots of rigs ready made, so that if you get a hectic spell like you can do on here, if you have a problem with your hook length, you can just nip one off here. It can then be quick changed on the swivel. It just needs a little collar over the end, a little sleeve to put it onto the swivel. So you've got maximum efficiency. You can vary the colour of the quick stop. I just pick them at random out of a little pot where I store them in. I don't know whether the yellow or the red actually sometimes acts as extra attraction, but it certainly doesn't seem to do any harm. So there you have it, a simple, efficient rig that you can change as you want. You can change it easily for a maggot rig with just a single hook without any hair rig on if you want. You can use the quick stops for corn as well. Very versatile, very simple. I recommend it highly. One of the most important features in success for tench fishing is being able to cast your feeder accurately to the same distance time after time. So what I've done is I've used a marker float to find out where the feature I want to cast to. There's a little bit of a gravel bar, and that's wound down the marker float to the lead, so that's exactly the same line as my rods are going to go to the feeders. So then I just need to put my feeder down and go round, and I know it's 9, so I go round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So just then tie that down. There's a previous marker on the line there from a previous trip. So then just some Avid marker elastic, make a loop, just push the elastic through 4 times, about 1 inch either side, and just wet it. That means now that if when I've cast out, that is sitting by my rod top, I know I'm 9 wraps out. You can clip up if you want, but when you actually cast out, you can hear the elastic go through the rod rings, and quite often if you've caught a fish and you don't, rather than casting out and clipping up again, you can just cast out and you can hear the elastic go through the rod rings, and you can just stop it with a bit of practice exactly the spot you want to. And that means as long as you cast at the right landmark on the far side, a tree, a gap in the trees, you should be exactly on the same spot, so you'll be going to build up bait in one spot and bring the fish to where your hook bait is. And the beauty of gravel pit tench is they feed all through the day. You don't have to be up too early, you don't have to fish at night. I quite often wind in at night. If I'm here for a couple of days, you can't fish effectively during the day if you haven't had a good night's sleep. So 10 o'clock, wind in, set the alarm, 5 o'clock in the morning, put some bait in, and quite often you'll have one first cast. And this morning, first 3 casts, 1 on each rod, bang, 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 3 tench. You can't keep that up all day if they're feeding and when you've had no sleep. Feels a good fish. It's certainly bigger than that last one of about 3 or 4 pounds. Oh, that's a good sized tail. Let's see. Looks like a completely different colour to the last one. That last big one was all green, this one's much more golden. It's got next to no spawn in it yet. It's a very long, lean fish, but might just probably a high 7. We'll just put it on the scales afterwards, just to find out, just to confirm. But totally different coloration. Beautiful fish. In the past I've used the ready heli kits, but we've now got what we call the adjustable heli kit, which comes with a rubber sleeve that the swivel runs up and down on. That just gives you a bit more protection in waters where you've got bigger carp and big tench. There's no risk of the swivel line causing pressure on the reel line while you're playing a fish. And these are really great bit of kit because they're as safe as can be, because the top bead just pops off dead easily. Couldn't be easier. So you slide the beaders on off the wire. All I've done here is I've changed the one that comes in the bag at the moment for a quick change swivel. So you slide it on and then the quick change swivel the sleeve comes off, and then I can that enables me to change my rigs very, very quickly with just a loop on the end of them. And then at the bottom end, all I've got straight through to a little clip that allows me to change the feeder, and almost exclusively use now the 60 gram combi feeder, which holds lots of maggots. It's robust, it's just about the right weight to give you a nice bolt effect without being too heavy to cast when it's full of bait. So there you have it, very, very simple, straight out of the packet. Anybody can use it. It's just the same way as I do. There's nothing complex, nothing difficult to tie. So away you go and catch some tench. This is one of the better fishing manner. There's a lot of 9s. In the past I've had up to 5 9s in a session. They go to doubles. There's plenty of doubles in Hardwick as well. It's one of the best day ticket tench fisheries in the country, and hopefully you can come and catch some like this as well. Well, we've come to the end of our session on Linear. I've had a great time. Before the camera crew got here I had about half a dozen tench to 9.4, and since they've been here I've had another 6 or 7. Size has been a bit lower than average. I mean, normally if you have a dozen fish out of here you'd have a couple of 8s and probably a 9, but I've had a lot of smaller fish, which is a good sign for the future. Hopefully you've learnt a few things. There's plenty of fish here. They're always welcoming. It's a lovely venue. Get down here, catch some tench and enjoy yourself. Cheers.